The United States has the worst educational system known to science. Our graduates compete regularly at the level of third world countries. So how come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? If we're producing a generation of dummies, if the stupid index of America keeps rising every year, just watch network television and reality shows, right? How come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? Let me tell you something. Some of you may not know this. America has a secret weapon. That secret weapon is the H-1B. Without the H-1B, the scientific establishment of this country would collapse. Forget about Google. Forget about Silicon Valley. There would be no Silicon Valley without the H-1B. And you know what the H-1B is? It's the genius visa, okay? You realize that in the United States, 50% of all PhD candidates are foreign-born?
People genuinely think education is dumb because school, public school, is not setting people up for success. You don't know how to manage loans. You can't read a financial form for your life. You don't know how to file your taxes. Dude, I don't know how to file my own taxes without free tax. Like, I can't do that shit by myself. Some people don't even know how to cook, again, because their parents didn't teach them. Like, dude, there are so many things that you learn. Actually, everything you've done, you learn. Literally everything you've done has been taught to you. There's nothing original about your experience. Sorry if you haven't figured that one out yet. I know a lot more than the average person, and I don't mean that in, oh my gosh, I'm so much smarter than you, everybody's dumb. I mean, like, I spend a lot of time doing research because I have the ability to. I have the opportunity, I have the access, and I have the desire to. Honestly, a lot of people don't have the desire to learn. They don't have the desire to read. I genuinely do. I love it. It brings me joy and nourishment, right? Learning is my favorite thing to do. And because I love learning, I have the privilege of the access to knowledge that I've acquired. So many people in the United States are overweight because they simply don't understand the concept of calories. Like, they genuinely have never been taught that food is calories and that certain food has more calories. They genuinely don't know what that means. And like, yeah, sure, some of them are on the internet, but I'm like, a lot of them are middle-aged and they're not on the internet. They're working their jobs. They're paying their bills. That's another thing. I haven't had the stress of having to pay bills for the last 10 years. So, I mean, I've paid bills. I've had a lot of bills, but like, I didn't have as much expense because inflation wasn't as bad. I was living with my parents, etc. Right? So I had the time and I had the opportunity and I had the lack of stress. So I learned a lot of things. So fundamentally, what I've been noticing is that the reason that everybody suffers pretty much is because they don't know to not suffer. Like, they think suffering is good because of their lack of understanding of it. Like, they just think that suffering is the way that life should be. One of the biggest problems right now is people don't value education anymore. Education is just as vital to people's survival as the doctors. We know what things are unhealthy. Like, science has taught us so much. Science knows so much about cancer. Science knows so much about plastic. Science knows so much about climate change, right? But the average individual does not know this because they can't read the science. They don't have the desire to look up an article. They don't have the ability to understand the article when they read it. And it's much easier to just go off of whatever's been told to them by everybody else. Groupthink is great when you don't have the access, the time, the ability to find the actual evidence. We need to have adult college. I've heard this take online before. It's not my original take. Somebody else taught it to me. But adult education is so important because science keeps coming out with new things. We keep getting different understandings of chemicals that we haven't used before, of foods that we are experimenting with. You know, it would benefit every adult to understand basic anatomy, to understand why these things are important. Like, if you know anatomy, you know why your posture is important and why fitness is important and why muscle and strength training is important, and that will motivate you to do it. And if it doesn't motivate you to do it, that's also fine, but you should at least understand why it's important. Most people don't understand why it's important, okay? And that is a problem. The entire internet is filled with information, but most people can't filter it and they can't check if it's credible. just doing things that are different than what you do every day is so important, because I'm getting stupider. I actually genuinely am getting dumber. I haven't been reading as much. I haven't been challenging myself as much. I haven't been painting as much. I haven't been creating as much. I have been lazy, quite frankly. And my brain is atrophying. Like, not significantly, but like, I am not as smart or as strong or as good as I was.
So if there's one thing I've learned while traveling as an American, it's that we do not know any other languages except English. I don't speak for everybody, but damn, we are really out here knowing one language when I meet people in Denmark and Sweden. Even people in Australia know like 3 languages. So, with that being said, it is my goal to become fluent in Spanish in 2025. I took 4 years in high school, and honestly, I think we all should like break the stigma and learn another language because it's kind of embarrassing.
Many Americans struggle to learn a second language. Now, this is something that could be seen as controversial because we live in a generation where everything is controversial. Like, if you have an opinion, somebody might disagree with you. So, but I don't think that this is really controversial. I think this is pretty basic. This is par for course. The reason why I think a lot of people struggle to learn the second language in the United States. I did another video talking about this, but the number one reason is English is a language that is spoken around the world. You know, the British successfully colonized a lot of different places around the world, hundreds of countries. Um, the reason why I think that a lot of Americans struggle to learn a second language is that I think that educationally, Americans struggle with a lot of different things: mathematics, science, higher learning, and so language falls in that group. I don't think that the universities, the public schools, or even the private schools are actually invested in teaching the American students what they need to know to fully operate in the world. And I think that that's my opinion. I'm not trying to disparage anyone by saying that. I'm an American. I grew up here. This is my opinion. I mean, think about this. A lot of Americans are still being taught the same way they were being taught in the 1950s or 40s. The curriculum hasn't changed. Schools are not even a safe environment to learn. Would you agree with that if I say, are the schools a safe environment for the students to learn? If you say yes, I would question you, well, why are there so many school pew-pews? I was watching the news the other day. I was watching Telemundo, and there was a school pew-pew, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how can the kids learn, and if they go to school, they might be attacked? That doesn't even make sense, guys. Like, this is what I'm talking about. The schools are not even a safe environment for them to learn. I think that what would help the students to be able to learn is our standard of living, our cost of living. All of that corresponds with why students can't learn. A lot of Americans live in poverty. A lot of Americans live check to check. A lot of Americans can't afford. A lot of Americans struggle to learn the second language because the way that we're taught in school is not really productive. Now, I've been on the journey of learning my second language, which I would say is Spanish. Now, I'm not that far removed from people speaking 2 languages in my family because I'm from Louisiana, and if I go back to my grandparents and great-grandparents, they spoke a dialect called French Creole, and like similar to like what St. Lucians and people from African descent in the Francophone world.
Somebody who speaks 3 languages or more. Multilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call somebody who only speaks 1 language? American. Ha 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 ha. I'm taking a break from my content about Canadian bilingualism to talk about American bilingualism. It's a common trope that Americans just don't speak other languages. It's a trope, but it's not true. About 20% of Americans are bilingual, a rate that is about half the rate of bilingualism in Canada, or indeed about half the rate of bilingualism in the world, where it's estimated about 40% of people in the world speak 2 languages fluently, and about 20% of Americans do. A first note about bilingual statistics is they're imperfect and they're very hard to get right, because bilingualism itself doesn't have a clear absolute definition. And even when census bureaus of various countries do surveys and research about bilingualism, they identify it and define it differently, which means that comparisons across countries are messy. But 20% of Americans are bilingual. That's a lot more than the stereotype. And it's comparable to many European countries, despite the jokes that Europe is full of bilingual people and America isn't. The United States is a little less bilingual than the UK, about as bilingual as France. So where do we get this idea that Americans just don't know other languages? I have a theory. Racism. No, seriously. I think what happens when people make this stereotype of Americans, whether they are American within the United States or if they are observing from outside of the United States, is that the bilingual people they meet who are American, they don't perceive as American, because bilingual Americans are more likely to not look like me than to look like me, though there are plenty of pale bilingual Americans as well. The majority of the bilingual people in the United States are Hispanic. Also, many Asian bilingual people, many African bilingual people. So those people who make up the 20% of Americans who are bilingual are so often not perceived as American. Let's do a little imaginary experiment. Imagine you are European and you work at a tourist site in Spain, and you get lots of American tourists. And many of those American tourists say to you, "Sorry, I don't speak Spanish." You might then think, oh, all Americans don't speak Spanish. But what about all of the Americans who spoke Spanish so well, you never thought of them as American? And maybe they're not only American. Maybe you perceive them as Mexican or Cuban or Venezuelan. But they're also American. And you didn't think of them as American. You thought of them as Hispanic. On one hand, that'd be understandable, but it would skew your understanding of how bilingual Americans are. The United States has a long way to go in its international language education, but it's not as bad as people think. And it's not significantly worse than some of the people who make fun of them most viciously.
I'm practicing on my intensity, and I have immersion. I have immersion because I travel a lot. So I got native speakers like Gino, my girlfriend Delanise, who's Cuban. Ella is a Cubana, where I could speak with. And Delanise has helped me. So the people, I want to shout out the people that's helped me. I'm sorry, it's some bugs out here. My cousin John, he's been a huge, tremendous help and help build my confidence, because he worked side by side with Latinos, and that's how he started learning. And he's self-taught. The next person I would say is Delanise, from Cuba. She has been very patient and helped me. Gino. And I would also like to shout out the people that's on my Diaria is Mi Lavabanto, Mi Ducho, Mi Visto, Ma Ropas, Cepillo, Los Dientes, Mi Cepillo, Los Dientes, Preparo, my desayuno, Mi quiero todo simplemente, el café, manzana, en de la mañana, empienzo, mi trabajo, a las 6 en de la mañana, temprano. Muy siento triste hoy pensar, hermano. Mi hermano estuvo nombre a Omar. Omar es no aquí. Yo escuché una canción. Mi hermano gusta mucho. El canción nombre es Amor. En inglés, Love. Artista nombre es Music Soul Child. Mi hermano ama esta canción. Yo escuché esta canción, me siento, ayúdame a aprender español. Estoy aprendiendo muchas palabras, phrases, and ¿cómo poder aprender español? Buena pregunta. Para mí, yo escucho noticias en de la mañana en español. Me gusta ver la televisión, Telemundo. También yo hablar con mis amigos, amigas. Tiene un amigo en Colombia. El nombre es Gino. Gino is second language could actually benefit you more than your first language because it gives you a whole new set of people to communicate with. Um, a new way to look at the world. Lastly, I would say if you learned your first language, I almost guarantee if you spent enough time, you could learn the second language. It's different if you never learned anything, you just can't speak. But the fact that you learn rules and dialect with one language, you're almost a shoe-in if you spend enough time to learn the second language if you applied yourself. And that's where I will come to the third thing. The first would be the way it's taught. The second thing is that English is so dominant. The third thing I would say is time. Most people look at learning another language as I don't have enough time. But what they don't realize is that they do have enough time. En el mundo ahora, en my país, en Estados Unidos, mucho cosas es duro. Es más duro ahora. ¿Por qué? Porque, Brian, is duro o difícil en Estados Unidos ahora? Buena pregunta. En mi opinión, muchas cosas es difícil en mi país ahora por la um, gobierno, la economía, difícil en todo. Mi honesto. Yo aprender español. Buena pregunta. Yo quiero aprender español porque número uno es importante para mí. Un día yo quieres hablar español fluida. Número dos, yo creo español es idioma hermosa. Me gusta Brasilia, otro país, tal vez República Dominicana. My rutina diaria es escucha noticias en español en de la mañana. Yo practico escuchando, leer, escribiendo Ahora yo practicar español hoy día por 3 o 4 horas. Ahora hay visitado Cuba, Colombia, and Puerto Rico en mi vida. En el futuro, yo quiero visitar México, Guatemala, Argentina, Brasilia, eh, otros países, tal vez República Dominicana. M- My rutina diaria is escucha noticias en español en de la mañana. Alienated from others, meaning that instead of feeling connected to one another, we feel apart. We feel as though we are not together. Now that's either true or it's false. Um, Instead of our media pulling us together and bringing us into a situation where we all feel closer together, what does the media do? Share stories, racializes everything, and divides us. Instead of saying this person was attacked, they're going to put an age, a gender, an ethnicity to it. They're going to put a geographic location to it. Everything is meant to
English
divide.
is the official language of the United States. In over 200 years, we have never had a official language for the United States of America. But Trump pretty much said, if you can't speak it, baby, take your ass where you can speak your own language. Get up out of here. So, like when jobs be like must be bilingual on applications and you can't apply if you're not bilingual, pretty much that's about to be a thing in the past. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I love it, but I'm also not saying that I hate it. What y'all think about that? Like, what do y'all think about English being the official language of the United States? I know that it's going to be some people that's like, well, the United States is a melting pot, da 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 da. But what's y'all thoughts about that? Like, how y'all feel about that?
A lot of times in life, guys, you're going to come up against obstacles and roadblocks that seem immovable. And most people, since we're human, we have a tendency to get stuck, to complain, to withdraw, and to experience what many would call circular logic, where instead of focusing on the problem, we just, instead of focusing on the solution, we just keep circling back to the problem. Small baby steps. Okay, first, I'm going to wake up at an appropriate time. After I wake up and at an appropriate time, I'm going to start my day. The hardest part of any day is getting started. Usually, guys, as we're coming down to the end of the year, most of us started the year off with some really big goals. So, for those who manage to keep those goals intact, is because they follow baby steps through the course of the year. So I want to tell you, if you're going through something right now, don't give up. If you come up with a plan and you follow that plan, odds are you're in competition with yourself. You're trying to beat your last score. You're trying to stay in the game. And I just wanted to give that message because there's a lot of uh things that could bring your energy down. Like, we are energy creatures. So if you're around someone or you're in an environment that's happy, you're going to feel happy. If you're in a constructive environment, you're going to feel constructive. You're going to fall into the flow of that. Simultaneously, if you're in the environment that's draining your energy, if you're in the environment that's pulling you down, if you're around people that's always talking negatively, and you're going to feel that energy. So it's important to always remind yourself why you're here and what you're here for and what you want to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. And it's important to take baby steps towards those
The
goals.
United States has the worst educational system known to science. Our graduates compete regularly at the level of third world countries. So how come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? If we're producing a generation of dummies, if the stupid index of America keeps rising every year, just watch network television and reality shows, right? How come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? Let me tell you something. Some of you may not know this. America has a secret weapon. That secret weapon is the H-1B. Without the H-1B, the scientific establishment of this country would collapse. Forget about Google. Forget about Silicon Valley. There would be no Silicon Valley without the H-1B. And you know what the H-1B is? It's the genius visa, okay? You realize that in the United States, 50% of all PhD candidates are foreign-born?
Real Black American culture is not a culture of hate. If you look up our history, our culture, we are a culture of resistance, a culture of love, a culture of wanting people to be better, wanting to strive for greatness, overcoming obstacles. We're not a culture of hate. Now, a lot of what you see that the negative ills in our culture has been caused by decades of discrimination, anti-fair housing laws, ghettos that was created, economic deprivation, scarcity in our communities, drugs. A lot of the ills that you see in Black culture is perpetuated by the internet. But if you was to meet real Black Americans, I would almost guarantee you that most Black Americans are really that this is just going to turn up the volume on the amount of hate and the amount of mass pew pews that you see out here is going to put the battery in a lot of people back to spread violence. And like I said, just recently in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, yesterday, they had a guy who, because Charlie Kirk was unalived in Orem, Utah, by a white male, his reaction was that he wanted to attack Black Americans at a university. Come on, guys. Let me repeat that. Uh, a white nationalist, who is Kirk, was shot by a white male, and one of the followers of Kirk reaction was a manifesto to attack Black Americans.
Racism and discrimination is holding the United States back from prosperity. Now, we all know that it was built a certain type of way, right? It was built using tactics of divide and conquer, right? But in modern times, it's really not too late to right the wrong. It's really not too late, guys. Despite all of the egregious things that have happened throughout our history, we still have a time and a chance to make things right. We still have a chance to make things right in this country. So I asked AI to tell me 5 ways that it thinks that racism undermines the progress of a nation, of this nation, or love. The age-old dilemma. Now, this is a classic hypothetical question that delves into what people value most in life. The choice between money and love often depends on individual priorities, life experiences, and current circumstances. Which would you choose? Ideally, many people would want both. We'll want money for security, and we'll want love to appreciate the material things that we are able to obtain. And I understand that. So there's no right or wrong answer. But when we ask this question, what we're really getting to is what people value. That the world is full of injustice and one person can only do so much, but they still have to go and try to produce justice. Comfort now equals regret later. Guys, at this stage in the game, at 30, I've seen so many guys sacrifice greatness, meaning having justice that they really wanted, but then that would entail having delayed gratification, and I'm guilty of this
My
too.
experience does for black people or people that would be labeled black are all over the world. And what the education system attempts to do is to tell us that all of these people came from the slave trade. That if a black person is in Mozambique, they got there from slavery. If a black person is in the United States, they got there from slavery. If a black person is in the UK, they got there from slavery. That's just too convenient. Sometimes you have to use your logic. The question we would have to ask ourselves, well, what places are the darker people indigenous to? And if you go down that rabbit hole, you will find that they're indigenous to every country in the world. Now that's another thing that's either true or is false. See, ask a